mind is are the Jews dead in Europe? I mean, is Europe dead for the Jews?
Yes, my book, The Strange Death of Europe, came out 8 years ago now, and many people have said to me it's a rather depressing book to read, and I said you should have tried writing it. I hope I don't often blow my own trumpet, but you know, the response to that book that meant the most to me was actually from my late friend Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. He did a public review of it, but he also wrote me a personal email, which meant a great deal to me. And one of the things he said in it was he quoted scripture, and he said, whether they listen or they fail to listen, they will know that a prophet stood among them. And I was so moved by that. And the sad thing for me, as well as I think Europe, is that they didn't listen at all. Everything that I said, and indeed have said for 20 years about the continent I'm from, they haven't listened. They've just made it worse and worse. And things like the scenes in Amsterdam the other week are so hurtful to me, in addition to the hurt, because I think, why didn't you listen? This is exactly what, and it didn't need a prophet, it doesn't need a prophet, it needs anyone with eyes to see the terrible decisions that have been made by generations of politicians in Europe to welcome in millions of people who don't like the society they're in. Now, many people who come do like the society they're in, and they need great encouragement, and the ones that do, of all backgrounds, deserve to be part of the society. But Europe has grown so weak that it cannot say what has to be said, which is that if you don't like our society, leave. It's 13 years ago now since a very fine man called Frits Bolkestein, who used to lead the VVD party in the Netherlands, said, this is 13 years ago, he said, I think it might be time for the Jews to leave the Netherlands. And he did not mean it in anything other than a tone of sadness. And I remember writing an article at the time saying, no, the Jews of the Netherlands should not leave the Netherlands. It's the people who would make the Jews leave the Netherlands who should leave the Netherlands. But, you know, I would just, if I may just say one other thing about that. Partly because of the work and the research I did in those years, and partly writing The Strange Death of Europe, I did become rather pessimistic, which may explain my move to America and, it seems in the last year, Israel, having made a form of non-Jewish aliyah. And I've mentioned this a couple of times before, some of what had become my natural, I'm not a naturally pessimistic person, I like to think I'm a rather jolly person, but having developed a certain pessimism about things, a lot of my readers and viewers said to me in the last year in particular, you seem to have lost some of that, Douglas. And I thought about that, and I noted it, and I came up with the answer. I said, it's because I've spent most of the last year in Israel. And that may seem like a slightly counterintuitive thing to many other people in the world, you know. I went back for a shooting weekend in the UK last Christmas, and a friend said, gosh, you're you know, in good form, Douglas. And I said, well, you know, I've just got back from Israel. And he looked at me and said, well, why would you be optimistic and, you know, in a good frame of mind about that? I said, because you should see the people that have been produced in that country. You should see it, because one of the things about, people always wonder about how great people or a great generation are created. And there are really only two things. One is that you have the foundations that are good. That the foundations that you have in your society are based on good and noble and decent principles. But the second thing then is events. And when events come along, especially the most challenging of events, then when you're tested, you produce remarkable people who stand up to the moment, who stand up to the opportunity. And when you mentioned the young soldiers we met that day in Gaza, and who I met many times in Gaza and Lebanon over the last year, I'm deeply moved and find it the honor of my life that they would say that they find meaning in what I say about them. But I always say the same thing, which is this is a reciprocal thing. If I give you any encouragement, you should know that the encouragement you give me is 1,000-fold.